All right, the diet starts tomorrow, but the podcast starts right now. In fact, Bill's training camp also starts for most of you when you're listening to this right now. What is going on? Welcome to episode 1102, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, however you consume this show. I appreciate you guys so much. I would appreciate it as well. If you haven't already, you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you listen to the show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, please make sure that you are following this podcast. Big shout out to our sponsors, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, just on the way from Highmark Stadium. Summertime, man. Patio's open. It is a great place to be. Also, of course, Imperial Pizza, 2 locations, Main Street near Canisius College, and the South Buffalo staple at 1035 Abbott Road, home of the best lunch special in town. I frequently do live shows at both spots, so stay tuned for more information on that. All right, the wait is finally over right now. The offseason is over. Training camp is here, and I'm joined, as always, for my midweek conversation, my good buddy over at SB Nation, Matt Warren. What's up, dude? What's going on, man? How you doing? I feel good.
Yeah, I mean, training camp's open. There's a new Fantastic Four movie coming out this weekend. It's summertime in Western New York. There's the county fair going on, all this stuff. So we're in a good spot.
We are. I love camp. I'm so happy. Even when the Bills used to stink, it just, that summer optimism. Yeah. It's peak summer to me when Bills training camp starts. And after what just sometimes feels like an eternity this offseason where we were just talking about so many things. But in other ways, I also feel like it went by pretty quick as well. You know what I love to do when I'm in a good mood, when I get excited about something? I'm stuck in the 80s. Everybody knows that. You know what I was doing this morning, Matt, before you and I are recording this show? Hit up the old record player, and I was banging a couple classic 80s albums. I'm throwing them up there on the screen for everybody. One of them, Lionel Richie. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. Dancing on the Sea All Night Long is on there. Penny Lover, Stuck on You, Hello. God, I love Lionel Richie. That shit just gets me so hyped. And then the other one I was playing, in fact, literally a few minutes before we got on the air here, the soundtrack from Footloose, man. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? You can't get much better than this in the 80s. Footloose, let's hear it for the boy. Holding Out for a Hero. Makes me want to go watch that movie with Kevin Bacon for the 20,000th time. But yeah, I was playing records. That's how excited I was this morning. 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. They got the old vinyl going, and it's here. It's here. I'm so ready.
Did you try to tease out the big hair and everything?
I don't have any hair to do that shit, dude. I did, you know what? I did have hair. I had a Ralph Macchio kind of vibe going. One of these weeks, I'll actually put up a picture because people are probably thinking I'm full of shit. When I was a teenager, I had me some Ralph Macchio vibes. They're long gone, of course. All right, so let me set the stage too today. We're going to spend some time. I got a handful of guys that I consider kind of low-key Bills players going into camp, but guys that really, for a variety of reasons, really intrigue me. So we're going to talk about that. Sean McDermott, I want to have a little discussion about him based on a clip that I'm going to play for you and for everybody from last week when I had Matt Parrino and Matthew Fairburn on the show live from Imperial. I thought they had some pretty poignant things to say about Sean. I want to get a reaction from that. Tim Graham, fresh off Mafia Con with me over this past weekend. He had a very interesting thing to say about the Bills that could sound like an insult, but it definitely wasn't. I'm going to get your reaction to that as well. Before we dive into other stuff, though, it looks like, and I want to be careful, and I always say this, we are recording this around 11-ish a.m. Tuesday. Training camp for some people are listening to this, depending on when you are. Practice might be going already. It might even be over by the time you actually listen to this. So I don't want to do a lot of speculating, but I will say this. I feel confident enough to say it a day ahead of time, and I know you probably saw the Pete Goelli tweet, a picture of his dorm room, the Easter egg in there. It certainly seems like the Bills are going to be going to the red helmet this year as their throwback. Do you have any opinion on this one way or the other? And again, technically we're assuming, but man, I kind of pay attention to what people are talking about on Twitter X, and holy shit, people want this so bad. Like there was a report which looks like it's going to be a false report that wasn't going to happen. It looks like it's going to happen. Do you care? Do you have a reaction to that?
I mean, I care what the Bills wear in that, like, I think they have a really great look when they're on the field. And if, they're going to do some sort of, alternate helmet, alternate uniform combination, I just don't want it to suck. And so that's the only thing that I really care about at this point. Like I would love to see the red helmets with like a 90s throwback. You can see by my hats back here, I do love the standing buffalo and, the old school logo, and, the charging buffalo is cool too. But like, I don't care like that they're going that. I would care if they did something like brand new, like a swerve, and it just was like, gray and blue or something like that. Like if it was just kind of like that thing that would fall flat for me, would be like an alternate that sucked. And so I don't really care if it's like the red standing buffalo or the red charging buffalo helmet from the 90s. I just don't want it to be terrible.
I like the red helmet. I really do. And I'm not trying to I think Aaron Quinn from Cover One put a picture of the Homer Simpson's dad clenching his fist, old guy yelling at the clouds. Yeah. He was talking about me on Twitter because I said, I don't get why people care so much because it's only one game. If it was for the full season, dude, I would be on board. I would be signing change.org petitions because I saw one of those crazy things floating around this past week, but it's just one game. I don't know, man.
And I'm mostly like team let people like things to, borrow like Nolanism. Like, I don't understand people going on Twitter and being like, why do people care about this? I'm like, just have fun. Like that's part of like, the fandom stuff. And so like, I know John Warrow is like, wet blanket about it, but like, that's kind of his brand too. So like, it's okay that he wants to come and do that. But, just let people like things. If they really want to talk about, whatever the Nickel City Bills uniform thing that's been floating around is, a draft. It's obviously not going to happen, but like, some of these other like kind of options, like, that's just, it's fun that people are fanning that way.
Shout out, by the way, to my girl, man, Ashley Petty, big Bills fan, and rightfully so, called me out. She pretty much just said what you said, and she said it semi-cryptically, but she was absolutely talking about me, people bitching about people getting excited because people are wearing a helmet for, even if it's for one game.
Just look at what Oregon's been able to do and sell so much merchandise over the years because of all their alternate jerseys. Like, it's probably good for the pocketbooks of the Bills. I don't know why they're not, why they don't do more of it. So, it just makes sense for them, I think.
Yeah, and look, Bree, one of the original founders of Bills Mafia, one of the three there, he said he don't care if it's just for a quarter. Give him his red helmets, even if it's just for 1 quarter. One thing, all right, so again, I felt comfortable speculating on that. One thing I do not feel comfortable speculating on, and we won't today anyway, is James Cook. And there's reports that he's coming to camp. However, it is unknown how much if at all, he's going to be participating. A hold-in feels like it's at least in play. Again, let's not speculate before we know whether he practices fully, whether he's limited, whether he doesn't at all. You and I and other people who are on this show, we will certainly react to that, but we don't know that. So as we're recording this, let's not get into that. There's one thing we do know, though. Somewhere, esteemed reporter from The Athletic, Joe Biscaglia, is weeping. Don't smile. What's that saying? Don't smile because it's over, or
don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Well, it never happened because Puntapalooza is already, at least for the time being, is over, man. The Bills released Tuesday late morning punter Jake Camarda. He's gone already. So as we record this anyway, the Bills are going into camp with just Brad Robbins, who he wasn't even in the league last year. Wasn't even 2 years ago. He absolutely stunk.
Yeah.
I'm a little, I don't care much, but I am a little befuddled that the Bills have had an entire off season and you don't go to camp with somebody to at the very least push Brad Robbins, who again, I could be wrong. I don't think I am though. I don't even think he had a job last year, man. Maybe this is the Bills. So I guess who cares? This isn't a drought. Brian Moran, there's not going to be Brad Robbins jerseys in the stands like there were for Brian Moran, who was one of the most valuable players on some of those Bills teams. But a little bit surprised, man. Just no competition. Brad Robbins.
Yeah, he was injured. He had a quad injury to start the 2024 season, was released on October 1st, didn't sign with anybody during the season. So, he was out of football last year, but it was really because he was, was hurt to start the season and then just wasn't picked up mid-year. As Joe pointed out on Twitter, Robbins was the better punter through all the spring stuff. It's one of the positions you can actually look at in spring practices. So, I'm sure they were keeping a close eye on it, but his contract isn't guaranteed. They can bring in somebody literally at any point, and they could probably bring back Camarda at some point if they really want to. But, so it's not like, he won the job already. It's just, he's the guy for now.
I guess. I don't know. Not happy. I wanted to see Puntapalooza, man. That was one of the kind of things Joe kind of got me hooked on that, and I was looking forward to it. So it don't look likely. Anyway, all right. Another thing I wanted to bring up to you, I wanted to get your thoughts.
Sure.
It was an ESPN.com feature, I believe, on Monday, and they ranked all 32 rosters in the NFL. It consisted of a panel of NFL analysts. It was Mike Clay, Aaron Schatz, and Seth Walder. And they had the Bills fourth. The Bills had the fourth ranked best roster. According to those three guys, Baltimore was number one. And then Philly and Detroit were the only two teams that were ahead of the Bills. If you're interested in knowing, folks, in the AFC East, the competition roster-wise, they had New England at 21. They had Miami at 24. That's a little bit lower than I anticipated for Miami, but Miami at 24 and the New York Jets all the way down at 29. When you hear something like that, the Bills, does that fall in line with what you think in terms of where this Bills roster is at right now? I'm going to be honest, I was a little surprised. I thought maybe they would have been a little bit lower. Thought maybe there'd be a couple teams ahead of them as well, but they're fourth, man. What are your thoughts?
It's really interesting to see something like that when you see the Bills only get 2 Pro Bowlers, and Josh Allen's not like no first team All Pros, no second team, like Josh was the second team All Pro, and that's it. Like, so if they have such a good roster, why aren't they being rewarded with, league wide honors at the end of the season? That's kind of my question. Like, I don't disagree that the Bills have a really solid roster from the top down, but like what this kind of says is that the Bills have, a super deep roster. Like, they've got 5 solid offensive linemen, which they do. We know that. They have 5 solid offensive linemen, but none of them are super great because Connor McGovern. Wow, that's a throwback. Connor McGovern was a, Pro Bowl alternate. Dion Dawkins was in the Pro Bowl. But like those other guys, like obviously had really good seasons, but weren't, recognized, on that national stage. So it was a little surprising to see them so high just based on what's happened at the end of the season over the last couple of years in those league-wide voting things, like, the NFL 100 lists, which I know is voted on by players, the Pro Bowl lists, the all-pro teams.
I'll say this because I can understand both sides. At the end of the day, I think the Bills' success is primarily 3 things. It's the quarterback for sure. I think Sean McDermott, who we're going to talk about in just a second here, I think he deserves a lot more credit than some Bills fans are willing to give him. I think he is a big product of their success. And in my opinion, the most underrated aspect of this team is their offensive line. I mean, they've been so good on that line for the past couple of years, and that means a lot. That's what they're a product of, primarily their success. And obviously the defense just finds a way to get takeaways. They have now for the last couple of years, none so more than last year. To your point, where I was a little bit surprised is they do lack true stars on this team. I mean, you got Josh, obviously he's the MVP. I think Dion Dawkins is considered a star at this point, maybe, even though he's getting up there. Matt Milano, maybe, 1 or 2 others, but there's not a ton of, star power on this team. But conversely, where I think they shine is I think this team is just loaded with very good players. It's loaded with very good players, and that's where the Bills shine. And I think there's a lot of teams that are too top heavy. Like, they're great. They're elite. Their first couple players are elite players, and then it kind of falls off a cliff. Like the Bengals, to me, are kind of an example of that. The Bengals got the stud quarterback, 2 incredible elite receivers, a few other good players, and then they got a bunch of garbage. You know what I mean? That's the Cincinnati Bengals right now in a nutshell. You could talk about maybe the Rams. The Rams got a solid team. I quite frankly thought maybe they'd be in the top 5 or so. But they got a solid team, but they don't got the best offensive line. And their secondary is not very good either. You know what I mean? They got a really good offense, good skill position players, great quarterback, really good front 4 defensive line. But that back 7 of the defense, I'm just saying there's a lot of drop-off where with the Buffalo Bills, and you can nitpick some positions, but find me an absolute glaring hole in the Buffalo Bills roster. I don't think you can find one.
I mean, glaring hole? No, I think they've done a lot of work over this offseason to fill those glaring holes with at least, capable starters. We say raise the floor probably 5,000 times during our podcast this offseason, whether it's, your Dane Jackson, Trey White signings.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any glaring holes on this roster. There's, even solid backups at almost every position. So, obviously, I've always been a big fan of Brandon Beane. I've talked about it a lot. I think he's really, really good at what he does. And so I don't think there's a lot of those holes. But like you look at the to go back to my point, like the Ravens had 11 Pro Bowlers. The Bills had 4. Like, the Lions were 8, the Eagles 6. Like the Steelers had twice as many Pro Bowlers as the Bills. Like, shouldn't they be a better team, quote unquote, than the Buffalo Bills? I don't know. It's just it just reminds you that the Pro Bowl is kind of a farcical thing anyway.
100%. But yeah, man, that's again. But a lot of those teams you just talked about, top heavy teams, where I think the Bills just 1 through 53 are solid. I still think 4 is a little bit high though. I probably would have had Kansas City and maybe 1 or 2 other teams ahead of them. And I'm not throwing shade at the Bills. There's just not too many star players on this team. I guess that's where I'm getting at. Anyway, I want to talk about Sean McDermott here for a minute, and I actually want to play a clip. Let me set this up from last week. Matt Fairburn, who usually covers the Sabres, but of course covered the Bills for The Athletic, very knowledgeable with the Bills, and my guy Matt Parrino got together. It was a really, really fun episode. By the way, if you guys haven't heard that, go back to last week. It was a fun vibe and a really good show. But anyway, one of the things that came up was Sean McDermott and just kind of the evolution of Sean. And you and I have talked about this some before on this show. But let me play a clip, just again, from Parrino and Fairburn, and they're just talking about the change with Sean McDermott. Here it is.
You mentioned like Brandon being so good about that. He's always been. I think he still is to this day. What have you made from a distance of the metamorphosis of Sean? Because Sean would probably never have been open to that back in 2018. Some type of and maybe you could speak differently. You covered him for a little bit longer than I did. I don't think he would have been as open to that, like something that would get kind of involved in his life in a way. But now you look at this year and how open he's been. I mean, he did my podcast a couple weeks ago.
That was very good, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was good.
The appearance with Sal and Matt Beauvais, if you saw that,
good one. Yeah.
Him telling that story about one of the fans at his daughter's softball game, I think it was a daughter's softball game, coming up to him and kind of giving him grief about losing, that was a peek into his life that I feel like we never would have gotten before.
No, and I appreciate that you pointed that moment out, because I do give Sean McDermott a lot of credit for being more open and being more like with you, he's clearly loose on that show, and there's that feels like, I don't want to say it's forced. There's an effort being made, and I think it's a good one and an honest one on his part. That moment that you pointed out, I was like, that's Sean. That is the real raw, him being really angry about that and sharing something that aggravates him. That's a form of vulnerability that you don't see from him in a lot of ways. So he's definitely, I think, he's loosened up. He's built the program now, right? Tim Graham has talked about this before. He's built a program that almost runs itself in a lot of ways, and he doesn't have to be as worried about every little thing. And you asked, like, would Sean McDermott have been open to something like that in 2018? I have a funny story. There was something I got under Sean's skin, I feel like, in press conferences all the time, almost by accident sometimes. And I asked him something about, I think it was during the 2018 season, about balancing the urgency of winning.
So wait, before you continue, is it the gym? The 4 a.m. the gym?
Well, yes. The
Okay,
early morning,
yeah.
The question was something along the lines of, like, how do you balance, like, the long view of what you're trying to build while having some urgency to, like, actually win football games? And it, the way I phrased it, or my tone or something, my face, I don't know, it rubbed him the wrong way. And he was like, why don't you come in here at 3 a.m. and you'll see how urgent I am. And I said to Boyko, I said, that would be a great story. Like, I'll come here. I actually almost just showed up at 3 a.m. and I was like, no, I'm not going to, like, get into a deal with security or whatever. But, like,
so, all right, that was, again, Fairburn and Parrino. Interesting stuff about. I'll tell you what, my first take was, God, man, I wish Matt Fairburn was still covering the Bills. I love him covering the Sabres, don't get me wrong, but man, he's such a good beat reporter. But what he said about the whole program building itself and every little thing and stuff like that really resonated with me. What's your thoughts? Does that kind of align with what you think about Sean right now?
Well, I certainly feel like he's more open to a lot of these things, more willing to discuss. I don't know about, like, the private life stuff. Like, obviously he's doing more of that, but, like, I don't know if he's going out of his way to share, like, personal anecdotes of his life with folks, the same way that, like, I don't know, Andy Reid might, in a press conference setting or something like that. But I do think he's more comfortable, certainly, than he was at the beginning of his career. But, like, he's settled into this. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say he's untouchable. I know a lot of Bills fans would certainly argue with that, but he's got the confidence of his owner. He has, a very good working relationship with his general manager, at least as far as, like, the business aspects go. I don't know what their personal relationship is like or anything like that. He's got a starting quarterback that, isn't going to lose him his job anytime soon. Like, he really does have the space in his day-to-day to be looser, to make time for some of that other stuff, and maybe bust out the granola a little bit more than he would normally have done back in the early days of his coaching career.
One other thing too, kind of related to Sean as well, to kind of piggyback on what we're talking about, just the culture of this team. And he's built a program that kind of runs itself, like Fairburn said. Tim Graham, who was with me at MafiaCon this past weekend, he said that the Bills may be the dullest great team that he has ever covered. But to be clear, it was a compliment. It was not an insult.
Right.
It's just it's a testament to Sean's program that he runs. And there's not a lot of drama right now with the Bills. But anyway, you kind of feel that same way, right? This is a great team that's really dull, but that's not a bad thing.
And I do think it does have something to do with the city, with this location. Players who played for other teams and then come to Buffalo talk about how all the players get together on weekends, or the pizza story, and all these other things about, like, the Halloween parties and the wives and girlfriends doing stuff like that.
Sure.
When you're in Miami, you're all spread out. When you're in San Francisco, you're definitely all spread out because the stadium's an hour away from San Francisco. But in Buffalo, everything's like, I mean, yeah, sure. Some of the younger players in particular will live in the city of Buffalo and commute out to Orchard Park. But a lot of those, players live out, in the suburbs, and there's not, they're not going to go hang out at the local watering hole. They're probably going to go over to each other's houses and hang out a lot. And so they do have this benefit of being in this market where I hesitate to call it, work family, because I really dislike that term. But, like, they have a special relationship as far as NFL teams go because of not just Sean McDermott, and he deserves credit for that, but, like, because of the location, because of the benefits and limitations of, the surrounding area, and, going into the supermarket and being recognized, even if you're, an offensive lineman or down the roster or whatever it happens to be. So I do think all of that does play into the type of culture Sean McDermott has been trying to build since he got here. And I will say that not every coach
that the Bills have had in the last, 20 something years has really embraced either the community or that sense of, I don't know, familyness that, Sean McDermott has really built here. And we saw negative impacts of Rex Ryan and Doug Marrone and a lot of other coaches. Ryan Fitzpatrick was on with Tyler Dunn last week talking about Chan Gailey and that kind of like a lot of people like Chan Gailey, even though he wasn't very successful, because I think he kind of fit into that like familial kind of community thing. Like, I mean, people really wanted to root for that guy. And I know Sean McDermott fits into that same one, although with a lot of success that Gailey didn't really have.
Sure. And look, there's just, in terms of Tim calling it a dull team, there's just not a lot of drama. I mean, it's not that there hasn't been previously. Like, there's no Diggs drama anymore. The Matt Ariza stuff that Tim alluded to on our show, the Von Miller stuff, you know what I mean? Whether it's his personality or the stuff that happened allegedly in Texas, there's just a lack of controversial things. However, stay tuned.
There's always something. Right?
Stay tuned.
You said that there's no drama, but then you listed two things from the last 2 years. Like, I mean, there's just things that pop up, but they're able to deal with them. And they've been able to consistently handle those in at least an appropriate way. Stephon Diggs missing a day of mandatory minicamp, the James Cook contract stuff. Those are like on field or on team concerns, whether you're talking about Larry Ogunjobi's suspension or the Matt Ariza stuff. And even like the 9/11 stuff that we talked about with, Ty Dunn and Sean McDermott, earlier in his career, there are things that happen.
Yeah.
But I do think he has the buy-in of folks where they can, manage through those situations and come out on the other side, maybe not stronger, but not worse off.
And like I said, stay tuned. We'll see what happens with James Cook. Hopefully it doesn't join the list of things we've talked about.
Let's put Hard Knocks on the list too. Like, I mean, it's going to be a distraction. I think they've talked through it the right way so far. It's like, well, we would rather play, Sunday at 1:00 every single week, but sometimes we play on Thursdays or Sunday night or Monday night. And like, being a good team means getting more attention. And so like eliminating excuses, going through this process. Like, I mean, we saw what happened to the Chiefs last year on their schedule when they played on Christmas and Black Friday. And like, I think they had like one Sunday afternoon game from the middle of November to the end of the season. Like, if the Bills want to win the damn Super Bowl, they're going to have to go through all of this distraction stuff. So, I mean, we haven't even brought up the freaking Hallmark movie yet, where Sean McDermott's apparently going to be in the Hallmark movie.
Oh, that's right. So I forgot about that.
I mean,
man.
We have all of these things. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, we're going to roll with the punches now. And Sean McDermott's smiling, doing like Hallmark, like passing the football commercials. Like, I don't know. I think it's cool that they're embracing all this stuff, especially the Hallmark movie. Like, they didn't have to do that, but like, it's cool.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, come back on the other side, and we'll get into a couple of under the radar Bills guys that definitely had me intrigued as we start Bills camp here. All right, I'm back here with Matt Warren. Before we get into some Bills stuff, though, I do want to let everybody know, big live show coming up at Sunny Reds Thursday night, July 31st. I almost said December 31st. I don't know why I said that, but July 31st, Joe Marino and Jeremy White, both of them will be in the house at Sunny Reds. We're going to have a live show right on the patio. I cannot wait for that. I'll tell you what, man, I've said this before. Lots of incredible media guests, athletes, friends that have been on the podcast, but for whatever reason, when Joe Marino comes on, it's just a different energy. I'm not even talking about like the actual show itself. I'm talking about the people that come to the bar. I was blown away. It was at Sunny Reds last year by just how many people came there because Joe Marino was there, having them sign stuff and giving them gifts and shit. It was just wild. It was wild. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Plus, Jeremy White's awesome too, man. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a good one. Next Thursday. Let's talk about some under the radar guys here that I think are going to be intriguing as we get going with camp. And the first one that I want to hit on is this starting to feel like a hill I'm going to die on for the next couple weeks at least. I've been very high on Javon Solomon. I think his potential in year two, I think he could be one of those guys who, it happens every year. There's a guy who you don't think much about, and then he kind of just blossoms. Terrell Bernard was that guy a few years ago. And I just think Javon Solomon has the potential to become that guy. Look, they don't have that Von Miller pass rush specialist anymore. They haven't had him in 2 years, the Leonard Floyd pass rush specialist. I know Joey Bosa can get after the quarterback, but even if he's healthy, I feel like Joey Bosa is a more balanced, well-rounded, souped-up version of A.J. Epinesa, but with more pass rushing skills, of course. Good run defender is what I'm saying with Joe Bosa. Javon Solomon's just straight up, let's get after the quarterback. And we saw the 2 sacks last year. His pass productivity PFF number was 9.9, best on the team. I just think there's a real opportunity for him, and I'm really looking forward. I'm going to be at not all, but most practices, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he looks, because I definitely think, even if it's a crowded position, Matt, I think there's a role for him to carve out based on what he can do.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about opportunities and getting an opportunity to play, and I think he's going to. Like, some of the guys that were ahead of him on snap counts last year, Casey Toohill isn't there. Dwayne Smoot isn't there. Von Miller's not there. Obviously, he was replaced. But they did draft a whole bunch of guys and sign a bunch of guys to fill in. But he's going to get, at least some opportunity to participate in that defensive end rotation. He played 54% of the special team snaps last year. You and I have talked repeatedly about how they've lost a whole bunch of special team snaps. So it looks like he's going to have a spot on the roster. It looks like he's going to have a jersey on game day. So yeah, I mean, he should have some opportunity, even though his highest snap count last year was 15 in that game against the Texans. Sorry, snap count in a meaningful game. We'll throw out the last week and a half of the season, but so, I mean, he might have a chance to, eclipse that 15 snap count high he had last year.
All right. So it's tough. And it's even tougher because there's just Michael Hoyt being suspended for 6 games.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, what happens when he gets back? I think those suspensions, Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt, training camp and preseason and the start of the season might be different because those guys won't be available in the first 6 weeks. Because I'm telling you, man, there's something inside my gut right now that just tells me that A.J. Epinesa could be in trouble on this team. And he's probably not, though, in part because, again, Michael Hoyt's not going to be ready to start the season. He's going to be suspended. By the way, a little bit of actual news come on Tuesday as well. Landon Jackson is off the PUP already, so he's full go. So if you're watching practice or hearing about practice on Wednesday, he's going to be part of it, which is obviously good news. I don't know, man. I feel like I could go on for him forever with Javon, and he has a different skill set. And I keep coming back to Joey Bosa just not being healthy and being brought along slowly. I don't think A.J. Epinesa is going to have a larger role than he's had. And if anything, it'll be a decreased role because Landon Jackson he's the same type of player and might take a little bit of that shine from him. Long story short, I'm rambling here. I like Javon Solomon. I think he's the guy. If you get him enough snaps, enough opportunities, I could see him getting 4 to 8 sacks this year and being a bigger part of this defense. Anyway, I'm intrigued by him. Next guy I'm intrigued by is a 5th-round rookie, and that's Jordan Hancock. In part because I think it was Bobby Babich. Was it Bobby Babich, Matt, who was very specific when he said he had a very specific, detailed plan for Jordan Hancock this year, of which we don't know what it is. But is he going to be a straight safety? Is he going to play slot corner and some safety, kind of like a Cam Lewis type, who's like a little bit of a utility knife? But they said, or I think it was Bobby Babich, a very specific plan for him year one. An intriguing talent. I'm very intrigued by how they use him and what he does as a rookie.
Yeah, I don't know if I see a roster where Cam Lewis and Jordan Hancock both make the 53-man roster. So I think that's kind of where I'm sitting as far as Hancock goes. Yeah, I think it was Bobby Babich who did say that about Hancock. And I think they only had him playing at safety in minicamp early this offseason.
So we'll see kind of what role they envision for him at training camp. He's definitely someone to keep an eye on during training camp because of that. Well, is he just going to play safety? Is he going to be mixed in at that slot cornerback position as well?
Well, I'll tell you this: if he's just playing safety this year, I think that brings Derek Forrest into play in terms of, now we're going into a whole little subplot here, but maybe Forrest's spot's in jeopardy. If he's playing straight safety, maybe, and based on, because he's a good special teams player, and I think Cam Lewis is an outstanding special teams player, I could see a path where both Hancock and Cam Lewis make this team. But if that were to happen, that makes me think that either Derek Forrest or Damar Hamlin, one of those guys, aren't going to make the team, which kind of leads to a on-the-fly bonus thing that I'm now suddenly intrigued about. That could become a battle. Forrest and Hamlin, both those guys making this team, far from a lock. And I like Derek Forrest. He was really good in Washington a couple of years ago. Got hurt 2 years ago, and this past year, new regime, and they just didn't like him for whatever reason. Kind of a fresh start and opportunity here. Damar Hamlin, we know who he is. He is fundamentally sound, smart. The coach, Sean McDermott loves him, but he is incredibly limited athletically. It is what it is with him. And we saw that stick out like a sore thumb in that AFC Championship game. Money matters, though. You cut Hamlin, I think he's got like $2 million guaranteed. You lose that. Forrest, nothing close to that.
So you had asked, if I had any under the radar Bills guys that intrigued me, and I wrote down Hamlin and Forrest. So, I mean, I'm glad to talk about them here too, with Jordan Hancock, because I do think that there's a roster battle at that position. Damar Hamlin's guaranteed $2 million. If he gets cut and signed to a minimum contract somewhere else, the Bills would get that, cap relief of somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.1 million. So I don't think it's a huge I don't think the finances are going to keep him on this roster. I'll say that. So if he gets outplayed by Forrest or Hancock or whoever, I don't think Damar Hamlin's like going to be on this roster just because of his contract. So he does have experience. The Bills obviously like that. And if they go with Rapp and Bishop and then cut Hamlin, they have nobody else on the roster outside of Cam Lewis, who's played safety for them at all. And so I do think that is going to play into this conversation a little bit. But I mean, you have Derek Forrest, you have Jordan Hancock, you have Cam Lewis. I mean, I could see a scenario where they do end up cutting Damar Hamlin. And that's why I called it an under the radar Bills thing, is because like Derek Forrest could come in and really he could take a starting job. I don't think that's going to happen, but he could theoretically step into that role opposite Taylor Rapp.
I know people are going to accuse me of hating on Damar Hamlin yet again, but I'm telling you, it's not me hating on Damar Hamlin. I would prefer, if I could see the Derek Forrest that we saw in 2022. Well, most of us didn't see it, but how he played in 2022 with Washington, I will gladly take that over what I saw from Damar Hamlin last year. And again, it's not me just trying to throw shade at Damar Hamlin. I just feel like there's no more ceiling with Damar Hamlin. You've seen the best of him. He will make the play he's supposed to make every time, and he will not do the thing that next level of safety is capable of doing, because he just doesn't have the athleticism to do it. And that's not going to change. So I'm okay with losing him.
Yeah, it's also going to be tough to judge this during training camp, because it's not like a whole lot of the safety position is going to be won and lost in those one-on-one drills. And even during the preseason games, they don't often show the safeties on the broadcast. So you're talking about all 22 stuff. You're talking about observing the 7-on-7 shell. You're talking about observing 11-on-11, whether it's, full scrimmages or just like, pass pro or whatever it happens to be. And them being in the right spot at the right time is way more important than if they make a play. And so it is going to, like, you do have to figure out who you're going to trust as far as like people that are watching day in and day out on all of those team activities, what's happening in that position. I don't think you're going to be able to like drop into a training camp practice and be like, man, Derek Forrest was way better than Damar Hamlin today in that backpedaling drill. Like, I just don't see that as a thing.
That's fair. And I will say this, I still would consider it a surprise. I wouldn't say like jaw-dropping stunning, but I still would consider it a surprise if Damar Hamlin ends up getting cut, just because I think the trust factor that Sean has with him. You could say, well, Cole Bishop's my starter, and if something goes wrong, he gets hurt. You're telling me that I could have a guy who was my starter last year and a half season before that who did reasonably well out there, minus, a couple situations that he got put into. I just, and he's cheap, $2 million, not a lot of money. I would be surprised. Forrest is, if both of them, hell, maybe both of them make the team. Maybe Hancock is that utility knife guy and Cam Lewis is the guy who could end up being out. Who knows? But if it's down between the two of them, I would consider DeMar the favorite. One last question about the safety. We've hit on this a little bit, and we might start finding out literally today being Wednesday for people who are listening to this show. Do you expect a legitimate, quote unquote, competition between Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, and Forrest, like last year was supposed to be between Bishop, Hamlin, and Mike Edwards, that because of injuries just simply never materialized?
I'm very interested to see who takes the first snap in one, in the first team defense at that position. Is it going to be Hamlin or is it going to be Cole Bishop? That's what's interesting to me. I do think that's going to be a full-on competition, at least to start. We'll see what happens as we get closer to that first preseason game and get into the month of August. But at least at the beginning, I could see a scenario where Hamlin gets the first team rep, to begin camp. But by the end of, say this week or next week, Cole Bishop's in that starting spot.
It could be a tricky situation for Sean because it's on one hand, you don't want to give the kid, Cole Bishop's still a kid, in my opinion. You don't want to give it. You don't want to hand him something and maybe him getting a false sense of confidence, being that guy, snap one, day one. But at the same token, you know what? He's a second round pick. Maybe it's a good vote of confidence to say, you're going to start out here and let's see if you can keep it. And maybe that doesn't even mean anything what they do on day one, but it might be a little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come.
Cole Bishop took a ton of first team snaps in minicamp, according to our connect the dots reporting from beat reporters who weren't allowed to say who was playing with the first team defense. But so it's not like it would be a shock if Cole Bishop was out there with the first team to start.
By the way, shout out SB Nation. I should have said this when every time I mention Matt Fairburn, a former SB Nation guy early in his career. All right, Next guy on my list is actually somebody who I had a chance, Matt, to speak with, not for long, but spoke with him a little bit this past weekend in MafiaCon, and that's Dewayne Carter. He was on with Mookie Hawkins and Justice on their Bills World podcast. Really cool dude, by the way. Very nice reception from the crowd. Very he's a Duke guy, so of course he's intelligent and well-spoken and all that typical, stereotypical Duke bullshit. But anyway, really cool dude. Who cares about that? I'm just pointing that out. Anyway, I'm intrigued by him because one defensive tackle to me is just such a damn mystery right now. I don't know anything. Does DaQuan Jones have anything left? I don't know that he does. I hope he does. How will Dwayne or Deion Walker, the fourth round rookie they traded up for, how will he be brought along? I still tend to say slowly. He's not going to get forced into things. Who knows what his back is like? We'll start to find this stuff out literally again today. Dwayne Carter's kind of a wild card, man. Mm-hmm. He's a third round pick from just a year ago. The Bills liked him. And he had some moments. That Houston game, I keep going back to that game. He might have been the best player in the defense that game. He played good, but then he just disappeared. He got hurt, just like several other guys, Keon, Kincaid, others. They came back from injury and weren't the same player. Dude was a healthy and active for the playoffs. That's not a great sign. But then this offseason, fast forward, and they're talking about playing him at one tech. So he's not going to be a three tech. He's put it this way. He's not going to be a three tech guy with the Bills with any regularity because they got Ed Oliver and they got TJ Sanders now. So, and they're going to have Larry Ogunjobi coming back from suspension. We'll see about that down the road. Anyway, his path feels like it's at that one tech. So I am very intrigued to see how he looks, what kind of reps he's getting in camp. Is he on the second team? Is he on the third team? How that's going. I'm really intrigued because Dwayne Carter, to me, feels like high upside, low floor. You know what I mean? It could go either way with him. That's how I feel about Dwayne Carter.
And I don't think people like some people think because he was inactive in the playoffs that he didn't get like a fair shake or anything like that. He played 30% of the defensive snaps during the season, even being inactive for so many games. So he had a lot of run during the regular season, and they were still like, nah, we're going to sit him down during the playoffs. So I'm very hesitant to have any expectations of him in year 2 whatsoever, just because the Bills giving up, they're not giving up on a 3rd round pick after, 16 games or whatever, but the Bills certainly cast him aside during the run up to the playoffs and into the playoffs last year. So he's got a long way to go to prove to me that I should be paying attention to him.
I don't know if the Bills are fibbing or not on their official team roster, but I looked at it and they got him listed, Dewayne Carter, at 6'3", 305, which if accurate, he's 2 inches taller and 18 pounds heavier than Ed Oliver. I don't see DJ Sanders even on here. Right now. Oh yeah, he's at 297. So Carter is bigger than those guys. And he did look pretty big in person. I don't want to say he was didn't look like a monster to me or anything, but we'll see. I like him. I'm hoping for him because again, there's some upside. At least there's potential for some upside there. Man, if there's still one thing about the Bills this offseason that kind of befuddles me a little bit is not upgrading from what DaQuan Jones, what I think he is. Look, I'd love to be wrong, man. I feel like I'm kind of putting DaQuan Jones on blast right now. He's not terrible. He's just okay.
He's one of the players that you could see losing his spot during training camp, and there just aren't that many. And so,
but to Dewayne Carter, right?
Well, right, yeah. Or to a rookie, we'll see how that goes. But if he's really lost a step, if he's really not as strong at the point of attack as he's been over the last several years, he doesn't have any guaranteed money left. There's not a lot of positions on this roster you can look at and be like, hey, I could definitely see this guy, losing his spot. You're not saying that about Dalton Kincaid or Keon Coleman or whoever. There's just not that many position battles that are really in play. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that we've been talking about the one-tech defensive tackle for so much.
And for what it's worth, I just was looking it up as you were talking. If the Bills were to cut DaQuan Jones, if they're to move on for him, let's just say he doesn't have it anymore at camp, and Dewayne Carter or Deion Walker surpass him, they would be eating about $3.9 million in dead cap, but they would save about $5.5 million in cap space this year, which if they end up, making a trade or doing something could come into play. And the other guy I mentioned before, maybe you can look it up while I talk next. I'd like to know what the Bills would save if they were to cut A.J. Epinesa. All right, so while I go to my next guy, you let me know that and let everyone else know that. The next guy on my list has nothing to do with A.J. Epinesa. And I'm not even sure quite why he's on my list, but I got Joe Andreessen on my list, all right? I think he's going to have an opportunity to surpass, even if they're both healthy, and I do not think Baylon Spector is going to stay healthy, but even if he does, I think he's got a chance to just leapfrog him on the depth chart. I'm talking about hey, they're both healthy, and Terrell Bernard gets nicked up on the first drive of week 1. Joe Andreessen will be the guy who goes in over Baylon Spector. I think he has that type of opportunity, so that alone intrigues me. That's if they only keep one. They could still keep both of those guys. I don't think they will, but they could. I'm interested to see, I've read a lot of reports that he looked really good in spring. He just looks faster and stronger, more instinctive out there. He's just, for a variety of small reasons, I guess, he's just a player that I'm going to be spending a lot of time looking at.
I think Andreessen is in a really good position. And when I looked at the undrafted free agents that they signed this year and tried to find a path to the roster for any of them, none of them are as good as Joe Andreessen sticking in year 2 and maybe even earning legitimate playing time. So I really like the chances of Andreessen being not just an under the radar player, but a player that's going to get onto the radar.
Okay. I like it, man. I like it a lot. All right. Last guy here. Admittedly, this might be debatable, okay? Considering him under the radar or low key, whatever terminology you want to use. Some people will push back and say he's not underrated or under the radar. But I got Joshua Palmer there, and I get it, man. He had a 3-year, $29 million contract or some shit like that, $18 million guaranteed. I know that. But I bet you the reason why I feel like I could put him on this list is if I told you to name me 10 Buffalo Bills, he probably ain't going to be on your first 10. You know, maybe even your first 15 he might not be on at this point. So I do consider him for that reason, a little bit low-key, under the radar, despite the contract. Anyway, I'm intrigued by him because what you said earlier is right. Safety, backpedaling, you're not going to see a lot at camp, all right? But receivers, you do see a lot at camp. You could see who looks fast. You could see who gets to the ball quick. You could see who separates from corners during drills or 11-on-11s, 7-on-7s. You could see their hands. Are they coming down with the ball? Are they getting their feet in bounds? They do those kind of drills to really, to test them a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing him because I do think, I keep using the word upside and ceiling here on the show today with these guys. There's some tremendous upside with this guy. He could become the guy who gets down the field. He could do a lot for this football team. But I don't know how much his role is guaranteed. Curtis Samuel got a big contract last year, got hurt early, and he was a non-factor. I certainly don't expect that to happen with Josh Palmer, but, it's not unprecedented, I guess is what I'm saying. But I don't know much about him. I don't know much about Elijah Moore either, but I don't consider Elijah Moore under the radar because we've been talking about him every day for, the last couple months now. So Josh Palmer is a guy that I'm very intrigued to see because if he could develop some early summer chemistry with Josh Allen, that could be a lot of fun to watch.
And they have a lot of receiver snaps to replace from last year with the loss of Mac Hollins and Amari Cooper. Hollins led all the receivers with 66% of the snaps. Cooper obviously came in and, was hurt, but came in late. And so he only played 22% of the snaps. But, those are 2 of your top 5 guys that they have to replace. And I think that Palmer's going to be asked to do the lion's share of that. And so he's going to have an opportunity in training camp to solidify that spot atop the Bills depth chart. Obviously his salary is going to play a part of that, but we've seen them, put Curtis Samuel on the sideline despite paying him decent money. So he's going to have an opportunity to do that. And I don't think enough people are talking about him heading into training camp.
All right. So good. I win that debate.
Yeah.
We fairly can consider him a little bit under the radar, a little bit low key, despite the fact that he's making a good buck. All right. I stole your safety one earlier. Did you have anything?
No, that was it. I did look up AJ Epinesa. They would save some cap space, but a bunch of his salary is already guaranteed. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me for them to release him. I think if they trade him, that's a different conversation.
Okay.
Especially if it's part of your pie in the sky Trey Hendrickson trade or whatever it happens to be. But I don't think they're just going to cut him outright.
The 3 guys that I did want to mention, I'm not going to get into detailed conversation about, but also that I want to see how Landon Jackson looks. Can he push said AJ Epinesa for playing time in that rotation? Maybe not week 1, but, midpoint of the season. I'm interested to see how he looks at camp. Dorian Williams, I feel like I know what he's going to look like. He's going to look really, really good at camp because he's just gifted. But does he get good to the point where you're going to find ways and reasons to have him on the field more? Whether it's giving Matt Milano a drive or 2 off a game, whether it's playing more 4-3 so you could have him on the football field more, especially against a team like Baltimore, some of these bigger teams. So I'm intrigued by him. Mm-hmm. Although, like I said, I already know what I'm going to see from him. I'm going to be impressed at camp with Dorian Williams. And then the last guy, we mentioned him. I think Cam Lewis is fighting for his life. Fighting for his life to make this football. Dane Jackson, too.
Nothing new.
Nothing. That's exactly. He's been doing it forever, man. Shout out Cam Lewis. Love that kid, man. Great player. Great guy, too. But him, Dane Jackson, every practice could be their last. They need to come and get up in the morning and hit that field at St. John's Fisher like it could be the last time they ever practice for the Buffalo Bills, because it could be the last time that they ever practice for the Buffalo Bills. You could add Jamarcus Ingram to that list too, but to be honest with you, I don't think, look, man, I think it's going to take a lot of injuries, multiple injuries at least, for Jamarcus Ingram to end up making this team, which is unfortunate. I do think he's an NFL player. He's going to play somewhere. I just don't think it's going to be Buffalo. But again, can Cam Lewis show you enough that you say, Jordan Hancock, you're just playing safety this year. You're not taking Cam's spot. And Dane Jackson, hey, if Trey White, for whatever reason, just doesn't look good, maybe he gets back into that mix to make the team. Anyway, let me ask you one last question. Then we're going to get out of here because you mentioned this before. I didn't, not something we prearranged to talk about, but you brought up HBO Hard Knocks. Camp is here. Obviously, the James Cook thing is going to be a big deal with HBO if he's holding in or even if he's semi-holding in. What can you see? Maybe one or two things that you could see unfolding, like stories that you could see happening, whether it's following a specific player storyline. What's one or two things that you think you're going to be seeing on HBO over the next handful of weeks?
If we don't get a Settlers of Catan, like montage from HBO films, what are we even doing? I'm just throwing that out there. I would be shocked if that didn't make it into the broadcast. I do think that the college moving away, like the going away for training camp, kind of fully immersing yourself at St. John Fisher University. I do think that's going to be a storyline, at least for the first episode. It's something that they're going to want to highlight with the fact that I think it's only like 6 or 8 NFL teams even go away for training camp anymore. Mm-hmm. And so talking about like the team building, we talked about it about, them living in and around Orchard Park earlier in this episode. But like, this team always feels like they're really close knit. And like one of the things that we have pointed to over the years of why they're close knit and how Sean McDermott has built that is this going away for training camp thing. And McDermott's talked about it. Like it'd be a lot easier to do this at Buffalo or in Orchard Park with their, brand new state of the art training facility that they built a few years ago, but there's a reason that they go away. And so I think that's going to be a key talking point at some point. You're probably going to get like the turkey burger thing or, what, like all the specialness that is St. John Fisher University. And it's all going to come back to that, the traveling for training camp.
I'm excited for the city of Rochester. I'm really hopeful and optimistic that they're going to paint them in a positive light, being out there, that kind of atmosphere that you just described.
And Pittsford's gorgeous, man. Like, I mean, they're going to go to the Pittsford Dairy. They're going to go to the Erie Canal and like
Barbill.
They're going to do that kind of stuff. Like, hopefully we'll get like a Thirsties and a Hungries, like at least a camera shot, if not, an interview, like all that kind of stuff. It's just I like Pittsford. It's a great little town. I'm looking forward to how they do that as well.
You want to make a side bet that my good buddy, one of my favorite journalists out there, Sal Capaccio, want to make a side bet that he finds his way onto those HBO cameras more than any other media guy.
He's going to, like, I mean, he's like as the sideline reporter guy, he's like, there's always like the Sal in the background of every cool highlight for the last 10 years or whatever.
His ass going to be on HBO.
I'm wondering if I'm going to make it on because I'll be at a couple different practices. I'll wear my best. I'll pull like the Leonardo DiCaprio and like the meme where he's points at the TV or whatever. But.
Well, I'm going to give you a prediction here to end the show. I'm going to give you a name. You want to get on camera, get closer to this player. Oh. And I'll tell you who it's not. All right. But I think about this all the time. Joe Andreessen missed the boat by a year. Now, don't get me wrong. He's still probably going to be a story, the homegrown boy, you know what I mean? And his path last year. But just imagine if they would have done this last year.
Oh, yeah.
A kid undrafted, unsigned after the draft, rookie tryout after getting, not getting signed by the Chiefs, blah, 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 blah. And he goes and he wins a job, a 53-man. Can you imagine Sean McDermott calling him into the office and telling him he made the roster and all that stuff? That would have been incredible. Yeah. He's a household name in Buffalo. Joe Andreessen would be a household name around the nation because people from all over the world are going to watch HBO. So in that regards, he missed the boat by a year. There's always a player that's, an unheralded guy, an uphill chance to make the team. I'm going to give you a name. He's an undrafted free agent. Keontae Jenkins, Virginia Tech, linebacker. I could see it. I've heard, again, I don't got no sources on this, but I have heard, Keontae Jenkins, really cool dude, but Spector gets hurt. Lofosio doesn't impress all that much. He's no lock. Jenkins he's the one undrafted guy who probably has some form of a semi-realistic opportunity to make this team. And they always find an undrafted guy to cover and follow. And I'm sure they've done their homework. And I'm landing on Keontae Jenkins. Now watch, he's going to get cut 4 days into camp, and you're not going to see him for 1 second. But that's my bold That's my bold Bills camp HBO prediction. Keontae Jenkins is going to be a guy that they follow. And if I'm right, holy shit, I am going to clip this and I am going to throw this in everybody's face because literally no one else has said this except me on this show. So anyway.
Good luck.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you follow Matt on social media at Matt Rich Warren, Twitter X, and of course, Blue Sky as well. Appreciate you as always, man. Good talk. Good time. And finally, next time I have you on next week, we will have some what's going on at camp stuff to talk about. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I will be back with a brand new show tomorrow.